A political activist. Very few have met her, but she's being detained in this building, a courthouse outside of San Francisco in a small cell. This is the first time a camera has been brought into the cell. She seems silent and pale as we visited her. Hello, Angela. Now, a year ago, the Black Panthers were much more active. You've heard much more about their struggle. Is the time of the Black Panthers past?
Well, the Black Panthers still exist. The Black Panthers are extremely active in the Oakland communities and in communities all across the country. I'm not sure if you are aware that what's happening now in the Black Panther Party and what members of that party are doing now.
Tell me, just tell me.
Well, if you're going to talk about a revolutionary situation, you have to have people who are physically able to wage a revolution. People who are physically able to organize and physically able to do what is done.
No, but the question is, how do you come to a revelation? Is it by confrontation? Is it by violence?
Oh, so that's the question you were trying to ask. Okay, see, that's another thing. When you talk about a revolution, most people think about violence without realizing that the content of a revolutionary thrust is in it's in the principle and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way that you reach them.
I see. Well, tell us about your struggle, Angela.
Well, I personally have a long history with struggle. When I think about the fact that Ronald Reagan was the governor of California and Richard Nixon was the president of the United States, the whole apparatus of the state was set up against me. I mean, they had all their resources, the FBI, the police. I mean, they really meant to send me to the death chamber in order to make a point. It didn't matter who I was. It was just that I was a convenient figure for them to make the point that they would suppress any attempt at liberation and revolution.
Well, why the strong reaction from your people?
Well, because of the violence that exists on the surface and because of the way the society is organized, you have to expect these types of reactions and explosions and revolutions and reactions to the prejudices that exist in our country. When I lived in Los Angeles, long before the situation that occurred in LA, I was constantly stopped by the police. They didn't know who I was. It was just that I was a black woman with a natural, and I suppose they thought I was, quote, militant. And when you live in a situation like that constantly, and then you ask me about violence, and you ask me about whether or not I support guns, it just makes no sense at all. I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. Some of my closest friends were killed by bombs that were planted by racists. I remember as a very small girl hearing the sounds of explosions and bombs going off across the street from my house and my house shaking. I remember my father having to have guns at his access at all times because of the fact that at any moment we could be attacked. And the man that was in complete control of the city government at that time, his name was Bull Connor. He used to get on the radio and make statements like, the niggers have moved into a white neighborhood and we better get ready for bloodshed. And there, sure enough, would be bloodshed.
Well, tell me about the bombing, the church bombing in Birmingham.
The killing of the 4 little girls. That bombing affected me tremendously. One of the little girls lived right next door to me. My sister was best friends with one of the other girls. My mother taught one of the girls in her class, and one of the mothers of the little girl, when this bombing occurred, one of the mothers of the little girl called my mother and asked her to give her a ride to the church to pick up her daughter Carol. And what did they find when they got there? They found limbs and heads strewn all over the place. And after that, the men in my neighborhood had to organize themselves into an armed patrol. They had to take their guns and patrol our community every night because they didn't want that to happen anymore. And so when someone asked me about violence, it's just incredible, because what it says to me is that the person that's asking the question has absolutely no idea what black people are going through in this country and what black people are experiencing in this country. From the first time that the very first black person was brought here and kidnapped from the shores of Africa.
Well, Angela, tell us what you and those who fight with you wish to accomplish. What would you like to tell the world?
Well, we are not evil criminals. We are just a people who have gotten tired enough to sacrifice everything within us. And what we need is the resounding, thunderous, united voice that says, we have no intentions of stopping this fight until we have eradicated every single remnant of racism in this country, and until every political prisoner is free, and until all of the monstrous dungeons that you call prisons in this country are just a mere memory of a nightmare. And that, brothers and sisters, is what power to the people is all about.